This is my house.
Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, is a 2-hour-long sci-fi action movie and a sequel to Rebel Moon Part 1, obviously, which was another over 2-hour movie. So you may want to watch my review of Part 1 first, and the first half hour of this movie really dragged for me. In the first movie, the female lead Cora was on the run from an evil empire because she'd been accused of assassinating the royal family by her adopted father, the new regent Belisarius. And I said, in my review of that, dated January the 9th of this year, what's the odds it was Belisarius that got rid of the royal family so he could seize power? I would say average to good. Well, in this movie, they did a flashback, and imagine my shock. It was Belisarius that did in the royal family, in a scene that was so laughably predictable, I saw it coming over 3 months in advance. You see, there's predictable, as in, I saw that coming, and then there's, I saw that coming over 3 months ago. It was also really dumb, because Cora could have done in Belisarius after he stabbed the king.
Seize her! There she is, gentlemen. The assassin of the royal family. An off-worlder. A cancer of ethnic impurity. Madeline!
And the music is all classical strings as the king gets done in, which doesn't have much impact for me, I'm afraid, because the king had no screen time. It's like, oh, what a tragedy. The king got done in. Who the hell was he? He barely even got a line in either film. It only really works if you care about the character, but there's barely a character there to care for. The royals getting done in was like a payoff to a build-up that never happened. Is he a good king? Was he? Did the people live good lives under his rule? I have absolutely no idea. I've got no idea who he is. And the whole thing is played like a joke. I think I've seen this in a Looney Tunes cartoon before, where they have striking music for a scene, and then they pan over, and there was just a full band out of shot playing the music. It's like a Marx Brothers bit. And that is kind of the whole movie. Style over substance, just like the first one, and a running theme of giving payoffs to, well, nothing. The movie is pretty again, like the first one was. There's some nice shots and cinematography in there, but it's like pretty wrapping paper on an empty box. The 7 warriors have come to defend the village, somehow, from a battleship in space. They arrive, there's an extensive scene of grain harvesting, and oh boy did that have me on the edge of my seat. It's a sci-fi. Why are they harvesting grain with a scythe? They have spaceships and robots in this universe, and the movie is trying to tell me they don't have a Frelling tractor. This is insultingly stupid. The movie is trying to tell me that the future of a galaxy-spanning empire depends on grain being harvested from this one village of what? 100 or so people? They came across the galaxy as a task force without food and provisions. And then a pretty blonde girl from the village presents the 7 warriors with tokens of the village's affection, made to suit their individual personalities, and again, it's a payoff to nothing. The girl has shared almost 0 screen time with any of the 7.
Young Melius, who shines as the sun upon our faces, warming us and bringing us comfort, steadfast.
They also barely have personalities. I don't remember most of them even ever talking to this character on camera. I've no idea how she knows what they're like, and me in the audience, I have no idea what they're supposed to be like either. There's an ambiguously gendered person among the 7, and I have no idea who the hell they are. The film treats this person like a returning hero, and is this film a joke? I mean, it is. What I mean is this film an intentional joke? Is it a tax write-off or something? This character, I think, was one of the rebels that were fighting the Empire in the first film. She had makeup on over her eyes, and I think only came into the movie in the last half hour, and I don't remember having a single line. I think she was a fighter pilot or something. She was of little to no consequence. The 7 stride into this film like I'm supposed to recognise them. Like they're Han Solo or something, but I've got no idea who they are. The 7 then share deeply emotional stories of their pasts, and again, it's a payoff to nothing. The films have taken no time to have the characters bond or even really talk to each other in over 2 hours. The film series is trying to be Star Wars, but I think that I learned more about Leia and Vader in one short conversation than I've learned about any of these, what I will overly generously call characters, in over 4 hours of content.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic...
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
Okay, the villagers are harvesting the grain because the evil Empire wants it, and for some reason, in a galaxy-spanning setting, the Empire can only get grain from this one village. So the villagers pile it around their houses to stop the bad guys just nuking them from orbit in their giant battleship.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Okay, when the villagers are told the timetable for when the baddies are coming back for the grain, they don't even think they can harvest the grain in the time. That's what we're told. But they do. And they also have time to train and do weapons drills, and build extensive earthworks, and drag Korra's spaceship over a mountain. This movie is Drek. The bad guys then arrive in their massive space battleship, and their leader comes down, yet again on foot. He did the same thing in the last film and nearly died, so he did it again in this one. Of course he did. He comes down on foot, having done no reconnaissance of the village at all. He goes in blind. So as is the current Hollywood tradition, the good guys don't win by being competent. They're completely useless. The bad guys are just such window-licking dolts. They hand the good guys the win with sheer incompetence. Ed Skrein, who plays the bad guy's commander, is quite a capable actor. He was in Game of Thrones playing the first Dario Naharis. He's not bad. And he's completely wasted in this movie. Everybody is wasted in this movie. They have Anthony Hopkins playing a droid. Anthony Hopkins from Silence of the Lambs, one of the finest actors you could hope to find, and they do nothing with him. The villagers then try to parley with the Empire and offer the grain to the bad guys if they go away. Guys, if you give them the sodding grain, they can just nuke you from orbit, can't they? Do you remember the plan? It was your whole plan. Korra is willing to surrender herself to the Empire and give them the grain if the villagers are left alive. And at that point, you'd be trusting the word of an Empire that you already know are treacherous, murdering liars. But Mikhail Hausman signals an attack because he isn't willing to sacrifice Korra, and the villagers then attack the bad guys. We're an hour in at this point, and the remaining hour of the film is one long fight sequence between characters that have had no build-up or characterisation. Ed Skrein goes back to his ship and orders it to open fire on the village, because it turns out that the entire battle fleet was only there for Korra anyway. And what are the chances the first place their battle fleet goes in the entire universe was the one village that Korra was hiding in? They needed the grain to feed their men while they searched for Korra. So hang on, the bad guys could have just nuked the village from orbit then. The grain being piled around the buildings was no problem at all. They didn't even need the grain once they knew Korra was there. If they get Korra, they can leave and the grain's not a problem. It's like the characters have forgotten their own motivations. This writing is an insult. Korra then goes up to the enemy battleship on her dropship in disguise, pretending to be injured, and after she's defeated the guards, she takes off her disguise and is going to plant bombs on the ship's engine. And this is demented. She's one of the most recognisable people in the universe in the canon of this story. The enemy battle fleet are there just to look for her, and she knows it, and she takes off the disguise that was covering her face. I just can't with this movie. Then Korra has a duel against Ed Skrein again, wins, and again, it's a payoff to nothing. Ed Skrein barely got any build-up as a bad guy in both films. I have very little idea of who this character's even supposed to be. Him and Korva's rivalry has had almost no build-up. They've shared almost no on-screen time together. They didn't even meet until maybe the last 20 minutes of the first movie, and they've barely spent any time together in this one either. They had zero chemistry. So for the crescendo of the second movie, we have a hero that we barely know anything about, fighting a villain we barely know anything about. So if the payoff is like a release of all the pressure that's been built up over 4 hours, the release in this case is essentially this. maybe give Rebel Moon a miss altogether unless you're a real sci-fi fan. So what do I think you should watch instead? In my opinion, if you're in the mood for sci-fi, if you've never watched Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the Star Wars original trilogy, surely everyone's seen that by now, Stargate SG-1, you could do a lot worse than watching Farscape, but my biggest recommend would be Babylon 5. It may look a bit schlocky at first with the somewhat silly costumes and not great looking sets. It doesn't have the budget of a Rebel Moon, but the story pays off in the end like a lottery win. If you've never watched any of them, go and do that before you watch Rebel Moon and you can thank me later. These two Rebel Moon movies together cost a reported $166 million.
Of course!
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
And Bob Iger's like, nah, master.
And keep going.